Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, entitled Punishment and Reward of Kali. Text number 38. Suta Uvacha Abhyartitastada Tasmai Sthanani Kalaye Dadau Dyutam Panam Striyasuna Yatra Dharmaschaturvidaha. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Suta Goswami said, Maharaja Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution and animal slaughter were performed. Purport. The basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy and truthfulness. The personality of Kali was given permission to live in four places particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking and the place of animal slaughter. Srila Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against the principles of scriptures, such as the Sautramani Yagna, association with women outside the marriage, and killing animals against the injunctions of the scriptures are irreligious. In the Vedas, two different types of injunctions are there: for the pravrittas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and for nivrittas, or those who are liberated from material bondage. The Vedic injunction for the pravrittas is to gradually regulate their activities toward the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women and flesh, drinking by performing Sautramani Yagna, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literatures are meant for a particular class of men and not for all. But because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons, such activities by the pravrittas are not considered adharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu therefore affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma or irreligious. But such activities are factually adharma and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually towards the path of dharma. Following in the footsteps of Maharaja Parikshit, it is the duty of all executive heads of states to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of irreligion, namely pride, illicit female association or prostitution, intoxication and falsity, are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, slaughterhouses, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstance should they be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution and falsity. The state which wants to eradicate corruption by majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner. Number 1, 2 compulsory fasting days in a month, if not more. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food, and the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. Number 2, there must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining 24 years of age and 16 years of age respectively. There is no harm in co-education in the schools and colleges provided the boys and girls are duly married, and in case there is any intimate connection between a male and a female student, they should be married properly without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution and this should be abolished. Number 3, the citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam by Karma Yoga or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord, regular hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam from authorized persons or realized souls, chanting of the glories of the Lord congregationally at home or at places of worship, rendering all kinds of service to Bhagavatas engaged in preaching Srimad Bhagavatam, residing in a place where the atmosphere is saturated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above process, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degrading, and when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is a complete disappearance of truthfulness. Allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried more than the above mentioned ages and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all description should be at once prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh as mentioned in the scriptures or not otherwise. Intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or the drinking of tea must be prohibited. So we are now discussing in the chapter Punishment and Reward of Kali. So Parikshit Maharaj has degraded and he is about to chastise the personality of Kali for inflicting pain on the on the personality of religion. So Kali is requesting that I am also the citizen, the praja in your country, and I also have the right to live. So please kindly suggest a place for me to live. And therefore here Suta Goswami is referring to the dialogue between Parikshit Maharaj and the personality of Kali, and Suta Goswami is informing that upon this kind of a petition from Kali Purusha, Maharaja Parikshit agreed to give him the place of residence in these 4 locations. What are the 4 locations? Where gambling, intoxication, prostitution and slaughterhouses. So where these 4 activities are performed, you can reside there, you can live there. So actually during Maharaja Parikshit's time, you will further hear in the next verses that none of these things were present. All these 4 were absent. And so later you will hear in the future classes about how Kali was not happy with this proposal and what does he petition further and what is the next thing. So in this verse, we are mainly talking about these 4 principles of irreligion and these 4 principles of adharma. So, and Prabhupada is very nicely explaining this verse about what are the do's and don'ts. And Prabhupada also quotes Srila Jiva Goswami about his explanation about different recommendations meant for pravrittas and nivrittas. In other words, pravritti marga, those who are engaged in the pravritti marga and those who are engaged in the nivritti marga. So because sometimes people do give us, when we say that we should not be engaged in these 4 activities of meat eating, intoxication, gambling and illicit sex, people do quote sometimes that no, it is mentioned in this particular thing that meat eating is permitted. So and then there is some references about how Lord Shiva consumed the poison, and therefore there are some practices in a few temples that they offer some kind of intoxicants, so and some kind of drugs to Lord Shiva and then partake that as prasad. So people do refer sometimes these ask these questions. So we should know that here it is clarified by Jiva Goswami, and Prabhupada is referring to that clarification here in the purport, that sometimes for relieving some diseased patient, just like sometimes when we are diseased and when we go to a doctor, and if the doctor says you completely avoid this thing, then practically the patient may not be in a position to accept that. So then the doctor will say, okay, you take it occasionally, don't reduce, don't completely overcome, but occasionally you can take. So the principle of taking occasionally, any common sense person, any intelligent person can know, it is only meant because we are not ready to accept the real truth. That is why they are telling, okay, once in a while you have. So similarly here it is explained that when the Shastras is indicating that yes, occasionally you can have meat. So of course, again when they occasionally permit also, they are having so many rules and regulations. Like we have heard in different parts of the scriptures, Bhagavatam explains that if a person wants to have on one particular day in a fortnight, then what all he has to do. So he has to do some sacrifice, then he has to chant one mantra into the ears of the animal being slaughtered, and the meaning of that mantra, Mamsa, is meaning that I am slaughtering you now for the satisfaction of my taste buds, but then in future you will get an opportunity to kill me. So now any sane person, when he is telling this and he is slaughtering, at one point, if at all his bulb glows, he will think that why should I risk my next life? Why should I now slaughter this for the temporary enjoyment and risk my eternal life? Why should I suffer more? So when certain things are prohibited, when certain things are permitted in the Shastras, that is meant for pravrittas, those who are too much addicted in material sense enjoyment. So for them to curb their sense enjoyment from irregulated sense enjoyment, this kind of a regulation is given. So instead of saying, okay, every day you eat, no, once in a 15 days you can have this, but by doing this. So any intelligent person, so much difficulty I have to endure to do that, so better give it. So it is meant so that that person realizes this kind of a thing and gives up on one particular time. So that is how these things are there. And like Prabhupada says, one man's food is another man's poison. So but we should, as sadhakas, we should not get deluded by these scriptural injunctions which says it is permitted once in a while. So no, when people are engaged in the Nivritti Marga, when we are serious about progressing in spiritual life, so we have to completely overcome these four irregulative principles, and then only we can advance. So this is what in purport Prabhupada is explaining. And Prabhupada has also used this term in this purport as well as in many other places, that how these four regulative principles, in fact all of you might have heard and be aware that whoever is taking Diksha, so we have our Diksha process. Once Prabhupada describes Diksha process as 4 no's and 1 yes. In summary, he says our Diksha process is 4 no's and 1 yes. What are the 4 no's? No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex. And what is 1 yes? Chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra 16 rounds every day. So these are the 5 principles, 4 no's and 1 yes for somebody to be initiated by Srila Prabhupada. So, and this particular phrase when he says these are the 4 regulative principles of freedom. So one may question that Swamiji, now we are saying 4 regulative principles means 4 don'ts. That means 4 restrictions. You should not do this. But then you are saying 4 regulative principles of freedom. That means when you follow these 4, that means when you don't indulge in these 4, you will get freedom. So how is this understandable? So just like when a patient is diseased, he is advised to restrain from certain foods to get freedom from the disease. As simple as that. So the patient will not say, no, why should I restrict myself from these foods? That is because to get cured of the disease. So similarly, if we have to get cured of the Bhavaroga, the material disease, then we have to follow these 4 regulative principles. And these 4 regulative principles, although it is regulating upon you, it may look for time being as it is kind of being enforced. It is being kind of not so pleasurable, not so palatable at this point. But still, just like when a patient is diseased, he's infected with jaundice, so the doctor recommends him to have sugarcane juice. The sugarcane juice is originally very sweet. Whoever is not diseased, he can experience that sweetness. But when somebody is inflicted with jaundice, he may not experience that. And he may say that no, it is bitter and why should I take? No, that bitterness is experienced by us because of the disease. Otherwise, those who are healthy are not experiencing that bitterness. They are only experiencing the sweetness. So in other words, these 4 regulative principles, although it may not be very encouraging and inspiring for the sadhakas, but we should all at least understand theoretically that when we start following these things, then eventually we will come to a stage where we will experience that happiness, transcendental happiness, that spiritual happiness, joy of bhakti. So for time being it may be little bit painful, sometimes because of the habits, because of the culturing that we have performed, not just in this life but in many other previous lives. So millions of lives, anadi karama phale. So many lives we have cultivated, so it will take some time. So but when we try to follow this, we will experience the freedom. So in 1970s, when in Srila Prabhupada acquired the property of Bombay in Juhu, so he told Dr. Sethi to build a compound wall around the property. And once the compound wall was built, then when Prabhupada was once taking a stroll along with few devotees on the Juhu beach, so one of his close associates, Dr. Patel, he tells Prabhupada that Prabhupada, many people are commenting different things on this aspect of building a wall against around the property, and they are saying that you have built a prison inside there. You have made a prison kind of a thing. So then Prabhupada does not respond immediately, but after a few seconds he pauses and then he says, the prison is outside there and what I have got inside is freedom. So Prabhupada had this unique way of explaining things and philosophy to the common men. So he had a very clear perception of what he is trying to give us. So in other words, sometimes you see in no other spiritual organizations there will be so many restrictions, isn't it? So people will say, come do whatever, yatomat tatopat. So whatever you feel you can do. If you feel this God is okay, if you feel that God, if you feel this person, you do whatever you want and you will achieve what you really want. It is like saying, you are suppose you are interested in going to Mumbai. So then somebody says, either you take this way, or you go this way, or you go this way, or you go to Mysore, or you go to somewhere, finally you will reach Mumbai. Does it make any sense? So when you want to go to a particular destination, you have to follow a certain chalked out path. So you cannot say, whatever you follow, finally you will reach there. That is foolishness. So Prabhupada had this clarity, and therefore from day one he wanted all these principles to be followed by his devotees. He never compromised on any of these principles just for the sake of gaining more followers or to make the organization more famous. No, he didn't want. He considered this to be the basics of spiritual life. The following 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex. He says these are the basic principles of spiritual life, of religion, and every sadhaka, every aspiring devotee must follow, and there is no compromise, there is no exception whatsoever. So he was very clear in that. So and then in this verse it is also explained why these 4 things should be forbidden. What is the harm it causes to one who indulges in these 4 things? So and it is explained that when you engage in meat eating, in slaughtering of the animals, it destroys the pillar. When you engage in 4 illicit activities, it destroys the 4 principles or pillars of Dharma. So what are that comparison? Let us know. So first thing is the meat eating or the slaughtering of the animals. When we engage in meat eating, it is destroying the pillar of Dharma by name mercy, compassion, because you are not showing compassion to the other living entities who are also defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as praja or as the citizens of the Lord. They also have the right to live. So that is destroying the pillar of compassion or mercy. And when we engage in gambling, whatever forms of gambling, it is destroying the pillar of truthfulness, satyam. So because in gambling you will have to lie, you will have to manipulate. So all this is amounting to breaking the pillar of truthfulness or satyam. And when we engage in intoxication, it is breaking the pillar of tapa, austerity. Because when somebody is intoxicated, it takes him to a false high, and then eventually he will be nowhere. So he will not be able to have a resolute purpose. He cannot be determined. He cannot undergo any austerities. So it is destroying the pillar of austerity or tapa. And when one engages in illicit sex, it is destroying the pillar of cleanliness. Cleanliness referring to shaucham, both internal and external. So that's how Prabhupada, he incorporated these 4 regulative principles as bare minimum necessities for a person who is taking diksha or those who are interested in progressing in spiritual life. Because these 4 irregulative things is destroying the 4 pillars of dharma, we should abstain from that. So let us dwell a little more deeper into each of these regulative principles. So first of all, no meat eating. So now, as we discussed, Bhagavatam explains that every living entity, just like Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha Aham Bija Pradapita. Another place Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he says, I am the father, seed giving father of all living entities. And you all the living entities have come from me. So therefore, every living entity, all the 84 lakhs of species, are the sons and daughters of the Supreme Lord. We are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and therefore they are also considered to be the citizens of the state. The modern understanding of citizens is human beings. We don't consider animals, birds, reptiles and other forms of living entities to be citizens. So that's a wrong understanding. So every living entity is the citizen of the state and is the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and therefore they have a right to live. And consequently, when we engage in animal killing, in killing of these poor creatures, then it is defying the principle of God. You are inflicting pain upon another, just like a father cannot tolerate one son dominating on the other son, one daughter dominating on the other daughter. Yes or no? The father wants all his children to be treated equally. So when we do this animal killing, so we are inflicting pain upon those poor creatures, and therefore it is sinful. And Prabhupada also says, now sometimes these days we have been hearing in the news that there are wars. Recently, few months ago, there was a war between Russia and Ukraine, and now between Israel and all the other, some few small nations. So basically, sometimes devotees ask, why is this violence happening? Why is Lord not able to handle this? No, we have to understand, the Lord is in control of both the order and chaos in the nation. So that means the order is also the will of the Supreme Lord. The chaos is also the will of the Supreme Lord. So now why chaos is the decision of the Supreme Lord? Why is the Lord permitting such violence upon living entities, especially human beings? Because we hear in the papers in last 1 week that how even innocent civilians are being killed by the bombing of the Israelians. So why is this happening? That is because Bhagavatam explains, because the living entities have inflicted so much of pain on the poor living creatures, this is the resultant reaction. War or violence is the result of it is the reaction for your sinful action of slaughtering the poor animals. So it can't be avoided. When you have inflicted pain upon lakhs of living entities, it has to come back in some form or the other, and war is one such methodology. So, and it is also, Bhagavatam also says, when one engages in meat eating, one is turning one's body into a graveyard of dead animals. So that is how Bhagavatam is very strongly commenting. And so then one may question, so now when we say all these things in the outside world, there are people who call themselves as activists in whatever garb, but they start advertising or professing or even arguing that no, why is it wrong? So you are saying animals have life, they are citizens, they are part and parcels of the Supreme Lord, therefore it is sinful. Now you are eating vegetarian food, so plants, and it is also, we all studied in our primary schools that who invented? Dr. J.C. Bose, right? So Jagdish Chandra Bose has told that plants also have life. So you are also killing some life. So you should also be punished. So how is eating vegetarian food better than non-vegetarian food? Of course, one answer is, see, just like in the world, in the civilization around us, when somebody kills another human being, he is punished severely by the state laws. Yes or no? The punishment could be as severe as life imprisonment and sometimes even up to death penalty. So that is a very serious consequence of killing some other human being. Now when we engage in animal killing, then the law is not so strict. Why? Because the consciousness of animals is lower than that of human beings. So apply the same logic here. The plants are even more less in consciousness than animals. And one distinctive feature between animals and plants is that animals are chara, they are movable living entities. So whereas this one are fixed, chara. Chara is movable and achara, so they don't move, they are fixed to one place and their consciousness is very, very less. So in other words, eating plants or vegetarian based diet, is it better than eating non-vegetarian? In one sense, yes, because it is less sinful. But is it not sinful? No, it is also sinful. Yes, in one sense, those who are arguing that you are also sinful by eating vegetarian diet are partially right. Because in fact, once when Prabhupada was asked some questions about these eggs, fish and vegetarian, Prabhupada remarkably responds by saying, we are not vegetarians, we are Krishnatarians. What is the difference between vegetarians and Krishnatarians? Vegetarians are only sticking to one principle of eating plant-based food. But Krishnatarians are those who offer the food to Krishna and then partake of the remnants of the offering of Lord Krishna. Yagna shishta shina shantaha. So the devotees are those who partake of yagna shishta. So that food which is offered in sacrifice to Lord Vishnu first. So in other words, partially that argument is right, that when we are engaged in plant-based food also, it is sinful, but relatively less sinful than killing animals, just like killing animals is less sinful than killing human beings. So in human beings also you can apply the same logic. When somebody is engaged in killing another one person, so he'll get some XYZ punishment. But when one person is engaged in killing a very powerful person in the state or the country, so he is destined for getting more punishment. Yes or no? That is because he is of higher responsibility, higher consciousness, so higher duties. So similarly, plants is having less, so therefore less sinful, but sin is not ruled out. So that is where Krishna is also telling in the Bhagavad Gita, those who prepare food for their own sense enjoyment are verily eating only sin. So in other words, we should understand that not only should we restrain ourselves from meat eating, and just eating plant-based food is not the end, is not the solution by itself, but we should offer the food first to Krishna and then partake of the remnants of the Lord, which is termed as prasadam. So that is the principle of Krishna consciousness. So now, one more argument people give. When we say that we just don't restrict to vegetarian, we also should offer the food that is recommended in Bhagavad Gita. The next argument they give is, okay, fine. So why don't we offer meat to Krishna and then partake? That is also an argument usually when we speak all these things to the people in the mainstream world, they offer this argument. Okay, fine. So you are saying that we should offer first food in sacrifice. So we'll offer meat to the Lord, and then it becomes prasad. So that we can have, no. So it is, we have to, in fact, in one place when a similar kind of a challenge was offered to Prabhupada and the devotees. So Prabhupada says that, you see, we are going by Krishna's recommendations. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has created this material world. He has told what are the do's and don'ts. So He has told, you offer these things to me. And we are not sentimental about anything in this world. If Krishna tomorrow tells that you offer this to me, we have no problem. So we are going by Krishna's recommendations. So as devotees, our only duty is to stick to Krishna's directions. So Krishna has told, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam, leaf, flower, fruit and water. So therefore we can only offer those foods. And secondly, the scriptures also say that the foods other than the animal, other than the plant-based food, they are inflicted with lower modes, that is the passion and ignorance. So therefore, these foods cannot be offered. Krishna later in the Bhagavad Gita, he also says that foods which are in the mode of ignorance and passion cannot be offered. So this is an explanation for why we cannot offer meat to Krishna. So, and lastly, even scientifically it is proven that there are many comparisons, articles available on the internet, that how a human body is designed to be meant for a vegetarian diet. So the different bodily parts and the way it is constituted, it is almost similar to that of herbivorous, and it is not matching to that of carnivorous. So even medically it says that. So for all these reasons, we should abstain ourselves from meat eating, from killing the poor animals. And not only that, so we cannot just say that we'll go for plant-based diet, but the correct principle is we should eat food that is offered to Krishna, that is, eat only prasadam. And the next principle that Prabhupada talks about in this purport is intoxication. So intoxication is again a very common sense thing if we apply, because every intoxicant, say for example smoking, the pack of cigarette itself offers an advice that this is harmful, so it causes cancer, so whatever, all that it says. Similarly, intoxicant, the drinking wine or any other format. So it is very clear to all those who are engaged in intoxication that it is not good for our health, but still they indulge. So why do they still indulge although they know it is not good? Because they want to shun themselves away from the reality. So they don't have the courage to face the adverse realities of life, adverse truth, that is the Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. They can't stare into that. So because they can't, just like Prabhupada gives an example, that when just because a cat closes its eyes and drinking, it doesn't mean that it is out of danger. So similarly, he gives the example of a rabbit also. So similarly, just because we cannot overcome people's conception that we cannot overcome these things, they try to stay away from the realities. They are not ready to face and find a solution for these problems. So therefore, they take this help of these drugs or intoxicants. And these intoxicants will help them temporarily to stay out of reality, but then it will come back in a more forcible manner only to pain themselves even more. So they will again be caught back. They will not get the... See, in this activity also, what are everybody trying for? To escape this disease, death, old age. They want to overcome these problems, but they are not knowing what is the exact solution for these problems, rather going to this temporary thing which is the cause of more misery. So, these intoxicants, they mask you from the pain. They for temporarily, but it will eventually cause you more pain. And in fact, Prabhupada in one place he asks that how foolish it is that when a person, sometimes in the to the youngsters, there was one interview being performed, and then one guy goes and asks, why do you smoke? So one guy replies, to remain cool. So and then when this was informed to Prabhupada, Prabhupada started blasting. He's a foolish person because you are taking in fire and you are saying, I want to remain cool. So how by drinking fire you can remain cool? It is common sense. So it doesn't need some extravagant intelligence. So it is obvious, and but still sometimes that is how manda buddhi is. Kali Yuga, everybody is described as very poor, dull in understanding these concepts. And so what are how do we define these that which overstimulates the senses and which causes you getting addicted to certain things is also termed as an intoxicant. So therefore, Prabhupada gave a clear instruction for our organization that when he says no intoxication, it also includes coffee and tea. If you have observed, there are many people whom you would have definitely come across, including your family members, that when somebody is used to eating coffee, tea, and when they don't drink for some time or days, they start getting severe headache and they start feeling different things. That itself is a proof that it is an intoxicant. You don't need the scientific and the medical confirmation of what is caffeine, what is tannin, so how does it cause. You don't have to do all that unnecessary endeavor. It is obvious. So when you start drinking that and when you stop that, you just can't resist that temptation. So that itself proves it's an intoxicant because it is tempting you towards that again and again. So therefore, we also have to restrain ourselves from this intoxication. And gambling. So gambling, interestingly, I wanted to know what Wikipedia says. I'll just read what Wikipedia says. It is the wagering of money or something of material value on an event with uncertain outcome with the primary intent of winning additional money on our material goods. This is how material civilization is. So they try to give some long this thing and a person will never understand. So what they are trying to say in this expression is that you try to invest your goods or money on something where the outcome of that event, in an event where the outcome of the event is not known. Just like there is a saying in English, a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. So that means what you have with you is better than expecting you may get double, triple, etc., but that is not clear, that is not, the outcome is not sure. So in other words, the gambling is that where you are investing on something where you don't have clarity on what will be the outcome, as simple as that. So and the results of gambling, in fact we have seen in the Shastra also, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Nala Maharaj, they all suffered the resultant reactions of this gambling. And why we have to abstain from gambling? Because it puts one into unnecessary anxiety. So it's stress, because you don't know what is going to come, whether even the principal amount that you invested will come back or not. So it will put you in lot of anxiety. It will take you through a lot of stress, and because of that you will start envying, that anger, all that concomitant factors will start developing because you are not clear of the outcome of the event. In fact, there was one incident in the past when in US there was some law about gold and some things happening. So Shyam Sundar Prabhu, one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, he was a wizard. So he knew how to grow the organization into profits. So they had some money from the BBT, from the printing of the books. So he once invested that and bought gold, because he knew for sure that the gold prices would skyrocket in the near future. And as he had predicted, it did happen, and BBT made some profits. So then they all came to Prabhupada, and they were expecting that Prabhupada would appreciate and congratulate them for increasing the fortunes of BBT and all that. So they very proudly presented Prabhupada, we did this and we gained this much money. Then Prabhupada said, this is prohibited. This is foolish. And then all the devotees were spellbound, they were shocked. So they again tried to explain to Prabhupada, but we made money. We got more money into the movement for preaching activities, for spreading the Harinam. Prabhupada said, no, this is not permitted and we cannot engage in this. So in other words, sometimes gambling is not just referring to, because many of us have this understanding that, okay, playing a pack of cards, playing something, that is only gambling. No, gambling, as we heard from Wikipedia, wherever, including the stock market, the shares, what we are trying to, because it's speculative in nature. You are investing and you really do not know what is the outcome of that. You could either become a crorepati or a pauper. It is not in your hands. So, or even betting. So these days, or even engaging frivolous sports. So that is all considered to be different facets of gambling. And no illicit sex is the last principle. So, and we all have known that how Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that sex which is meant for progeny, it is not against the regulative principles. I am that. So there is no problem in that. But then what is meant for just satisfying one's demands, so, and that is considered to be illicit sex. And another simple definition for illicit sex is any connection with the opposite sex outside marriage. So that's how Prabhupada was very clear that if you wish, if you cannot abstain yourself from complete sex life, so then you get married, no problem. So, but you don't be a pretender. And so these days you see, so all nonsense concepts of, there is some movie that became famous recently also, Oh My God, part 2. So what is wrong in certain things. So, so all this, and recently there are some Supreme Court verdicts in the last 3 days about how there was a lot of deliberation on the marriage to be permitted between the same sex. So is that okay? So LGBT communities, so many people are fighting for so many nonsense things. And so all these are nothing but different versions of the human being's tendency to engage in illicit sex. So this also has to be abstained. And following these principles is by design, and it is not optional. So like for example, in the recent days, one of the politician commented that he compared Sanatana Dharma to be malaria or dengue. It really kills people. So, but what he is saying that it is because of incomplete understanding of the scriptures. Rather, scriptures are advising ahara nidra bhayamaitunamscha samanyametad pashubi naranam dharmo hi tesham adhiko visheshaha dharmena hina pashubi samanaha. So these 4 things, eating, sleeping, mating and defending, ahara nidra bhayamaitunamscha, it is common to both human beings and animals. In fact, Prabhupada once jokingly said, animals are running on 4 legs and human beings are running on 4 wheels. That's the only difference. And Shastra is telling, so now what is special about the human form of life? Dharmaha, dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishe. That is the only thing which is special for human beings. And if you give up on that dharma, you are equal to animal. So it is exactly opposite to what that politician said. So this dharma is the only exquisite feature or facility for a human being, and if you don't engage in dharma, you are getting equal to animals. So Prabhupada said very clearly that we have to follow these 4 regulative principles, especially for those who are interested in spiritual life. And if you don't follow this dharma, what is happening? We are just wasting our human form of life. So if you are engaging in other things, see, just like you may say that, no, I am achieving this, science, that, this and all. That is all okay. So, but the purpose of human life is to get out of these real problems of life. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Just like there is an example given in aircraft. An aircraft is a very costly equipment. So, why? Because the materials that is used in making an aircraft, it can allow you to travel in the air. So it will overcome the principles of gravity. So it can transport you faster to other places. But then, if you argue with me that no, Prabhu, aircraft can also be used as a taxi. Then aircraft can also be used on the roads. Yes, the answer is yes. Aircraft can, but is it worth it? Or another example, just like currency note. We all know the value of currency notes, 500 rupees, 1000 rupees, 200, 2000 rupees, whatever the denomination. 2000 is not there now, legal tender. So, that currency notes, when you go and you can buy lot of commodities and equipments from that currency. Yes or no? But you can also use that currency note in another format. What is that? You can use the currency notes as paper to heat your water. You can place lot of currency notes and you can put fire into it. So will you achieve the purpose of heating water or not? Yes or no? Yes. But is it an intelligent approach? No. So you give one currency note and exchange that to an equipment or a stove or something for heats your water, and that is done. So human form of life is meant for following these four regulative principles for achieving freedom. And when we don't do that, then there is no question of spirituality. Just like there was one person called as Vairagi Baba. He used to frequently come and he used to give an impression to all the devotees and to Prabhupada that I am following everything. So he then, whenever some philosophy is being taught or discussed, he used to add his comments to that. So everybody were thinking, oh, what a great personality, he knows everything, he speaks everything, he is doing everything. So he gave an impression to all the devotees around that he is a great devotee. But one time the devotees had gone out and they saw Vairagi Baba drinking tea. So just like we also see so many people, in the name of this thing, Babas, but they smoke cigarettes or take ganja or some other things. So then the devotees mustered courage and went and asked that Vairagi Baba, so that, isn't drinking tea not recommended, it is against the Shastra. No, I am not like that, I am an Avaduta. So then the devotees heard this term for the first time, the Avaduta. So they didn't know what it means. So then they come to Prabhupada and they ask Prabhupada, you know this Vairagi Baba who comes, and we all thought, he said, but today we saw him drinking tea. So is it authorized? He said, no, drinking tea is against our regulative principles, it should not be. So then devotees also told, no, when we questioned Vairagi Baba about this, he said Avaduta. What does it mean? So then Prabhupada explains, Avaduta is actually referring to Nityananda Prabhu, who is beyond rules and regulations. But for all the other sadhakas, when we are in the sadhana bhakti, when we have not yet invoked the love towards Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are supposed to follow these rules and regulations. So and then Prabhupada disapproved this act of Vairagi Baba and he said it is wrong. So similarly, we as sadhakas, we have to be very sincere and serious in following these four regulative principles, and we cannot take it for granted. So what is the solution? Sometimes now we may ask, Prabhu, I am not able to follow it so seriously, or sometimes I fail. What is the solution? The only solution to follow these four regulative principles more seriously is the sadhana process. So just like when we are diseased, the doctor recommends two things. One is the diet and the other is the prescription, the medicine. So the diet is the four regulative principles, means we are abstaining from certain things to avoid furthering our disease. So when we are having diabetes, the doctor advises not to take sweets. Okay, because so that your sugar levels don't shoot up further. When we are having high cholesterol, the doctor says avoid fried foods so that the cholesterol doesn't increase further. But when we are having already high cholesterol and high sugar, the doctor, in addition to recommending the diet, he will also suggest a medicine to get cured of the existing disease which is already accumulated over so many years. So similarly, in the process of bhakti, One thing is to restrain ourselves from the four regulative irreligious principles, that is to not further our disease. At the same time, we have already furthered our disease by engaging in these four irregulative principles for so many lives, and now to get extinguished, to get removed, absolved from all these so many lives of anadi karma, for that sadhana process is recommended. And while we are doing the sadhana process, we should be a little bit more patient. So just like some of us may be practicing for a few months, for a few years, or even for decades, or some of us may be even practicing for a few lifetimes. So we cannot become impatient that why am I not experiencing that freedom? Why am I still feeling an kind of an affliction for these irregulative things, for these sinful things? See, Prabhupada says that just like when we switch off the fan, that momentum will continue to be there, but eventually it will come to a standstill. But what are we supposed to do? We should not switch on the fan again. So that means we should not engage in sinful activities again consciously, but that pull will eventually overcome. And Prabhupada gives the example of raw mango and ripened mango. The raw mango, like right now, raw mango is not very sweet. So sadhana process is not very sweet. So we don't feel enthused to chant our 16 rounds. So we keep talking, we do everything while chanting. So but eventually if we are continuing the practice, the process of sadhana, eventually we will experience the ripened mango. So we have to have patience, and we have to follow these principles of sadhana. And principles of sadhana can be encapsulated into four basic principles called as ABCD of sadhana. So A is association of devotees, the sadhu sangha. So out of the 9 stages of bhakti, the nectar of devotion recommends the sadhu sangha is the first thing. So only when you have sadhu sangha, then all other further stages develop. So and B, the book reading, we have to study the scriptures, we have to read the shastras. So then you will understand, you will get the strength to follow these four regulative principles. And C is chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And D is diet. What is our diet? Krishna Prasadam. So in Krishna Prasadam, many times we all feel, imagine if Prabhupada would not have given this concept of Krishna Prasadam. So if you would have told you are only supposed to eat dry leaves, fruits, soups, salads, so no other things, I think most of us would have left Krishna consciousness, isn't it? So today Krishna Prasadam, so the principle is so nice. So because the concept is we don't do anything for our sense enjoyment, and we also recognize that everything is coming out of Krishna. So when we say we have to renounce something, what should we renounce? That is why Prabhupada has written a book, Renunciation with Wisdom. So you see, it's just like you don't own anything, so why should you renounce? Everything is belonging to Krishna. So when you give that thing, original thing, back to the original owner, so then that is nothing but you're not a thief anymore. So when we are offering, that is the mood. When we are offering food, what does it mean? The mood of offering is, this food has come about because of your mercy. Therefore, please accept this. And Krishna is so merciful that he is giving back that remnants to us. So D is diet. And another principle which is also mentioned in this purport is living in the spiritual place, dhams. And Prabhupada says all my temples are spiritual places. So in other words, coming to temple, associating with devotees, chanting the Mahamantra, reading the books of Prabhupada, eating Krishna Prasadam, these are the simple principles that is recommended as part of sadhana. And when we do that, we will get strength to follow the four regulative principles. And when we start following the four regulative principles and avoid the four pillars of sinful life, so then we will further advance in spiritual life. And one day we will be able to awaken our true relationship with Krishna, and then Krishna will be, and when we awaken true relationship with Krishna, then we will become happy and we can escape this bhavasagara of Janma, Mrityu, Jara and Vyadi. So we will end the Bhagavatam here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki श्रीमद् भागवतम की। ताय गौर प्रेमानंदी।